And I'll just tell you a little bit about me. I have been here at the University of Arizona for, oh gosh, this is 13 years now. And for about 4 of those years, I was working in the McGuire Center, both running it. They asked me to watch it for a little while, and then 3 years later, I had to ask to get out because I was there a long time running it. We did wonderful things in McGuire Center. So, but I've been a professor. I mean, I've been here at the university for 13 years. I've been a professor of management for more than 20 years now. But this is, I also have I'm an engineer by training. So for any of you who goes through some of this and says so much of putting together business plans, so much of launching a venture is soft and squishy things, and I'm just not comfortable with it. I can appreciate the pain sometimes because I was trained as a project engineer, and sometimes I think like a project engineer, but all these other things are pretty important as well. And in my role as a faculty member, I work with executives, I teach undergraduates and MBA students, and I've spent a lot of time also around investors and venture capitalists, listening to pitches, going to incubators and listening to what's going on. So some of what I'm going to talk to you about today, some of you will know and you'll appreciate, and I'd love to hear your comments on it, but this is collective wisdom on what you should be trying to accomplish in an executive summary, because as Eric said, this is the first peek a lot of people will get, particularly investors will get into your business. So you think of it as a window into your business plan, and sometimes this is the only thing people are going to read or going to take a look at. So it's important to think about how I put together my executive summary. Let's see if I can get all this working here. There you go. And so when you think about where you start with executive summaries, what you're trying to do literally is take all of the years of work, all of the thought that went into your business plan, all the thought that went into your model, all of the data and information and customer interviews and everything else that you've created, and how do I distill them into just a peek that people can have so they can have an understanding of my business. And so this is, so it's taking all the ideas that you have, all the things that you've collected, and trying to distill them down. And so to understand how to put together or write a good executive summary, it's good to think about really what is an executive summary and what should I be trying to accomplish. So we think about it this way. An executive summary, in essence, is a short version of your business plan. It's all the highlights. It's all the important things without putting in all the details that we already sometimes want to talk about. The purpose of an executive summary is to allow investors to evaluate a business before they hear all the details. So think of it as a high picture look that has enough at your business, that has enough flesh to it, that people have an understanding for what you're trying to accomplish, why, and what the potential is for what you are doing. It is the first impression that you're going to give anybody of your business and of the potential of your business to the investors who are looking at it. And so if you think about what an executive summary does, you really have to flip it around. It is not an opportunity to summarize what I'm doing in my business. It's an opportunity to sell my business. And so you want to think about it that way. You want to think about the selling part of it. And this is the part that sometimes makes technical people a little nauseous. This is your opportunity to tell a story. And so much of what goes into an executive summary is storytelling. If you write an executive summary right, it's a compelling story, and it's actually a pitch in words for people about why they should be interested in my business, why they should want to invest in my business, and the potential it has to do wonderful things. Okay, so that's what's behind an executive summary. Think about it as telling what you would say in a pitch, but you're doing it in words. Now, when you think about what goes into an executive summary and what it looks like, here's what most experts would tell you. One, it's not a very long document. 1 to 2 pages, 1 page if you can get it to there. But it is something that people can read relatively quickly, and the content of what they are looking for in an executive summary, what anyone who reads it is looking for, is this. You should identify who your company is and what your value proposition is. So there's a problem that you are trying to solve, an opportunity that you are trying to facilitate, and that someone cares about what you're doing. So it's the benefit that you are bringing to an audience, or to the customers that you are targeting. So in your executive summary, you should try and have a brief description of what your product or service is, because people want to walk away knowing who you are and what you do. You should have some description of what your target market is. You're trying to communicate to investors that I know who my customers are and I understand a little bit about them. I understand pretty much how big the market is, but I also understand what they want and what they're looking for and why they would be interested in my particular product or service. Certainly in an executive summary, you want to communicate something about what your business model is and what your plans are for the future. So how is it going to unfold? How are you going to roll it out? All the things that go into a business model canvas, that's just, you want to communicate to people in very few words what it is and how it works. If there is competition, and every one of you has competition that you are positioning yourself against, you want to refer to what differentiates your business. So what's unique about you that that people would want to invest in you compared to any other solution that they can invest in. You want to signal financially, here's what my company looks like, here's how I expect to make revenue, here's the funding that I have. You want to give people an opportunity to know how they can make money by investing in your company. You certainly want to say something about your team, because pretty much the research that we have on pitches and on investors is they are investing as much in you as individuals as they are investing in the business that you're putting together. And in fact, there are many investors who put far more weight on how compelling the individuals who are members of the founding team are than they are in the business plan or on the business specifics itself. So you want to communicate something about your team. You certainly want to say what it is that you are looking for in terms of funding. What's the ask? So think about it that way, that you are asking people for, and what part of the company does that, how much of the company does that represent? And if there is anything special or compelling about your company, right? If you have a competitive advantage that you can talk to or speak to, you want that in your executive summary. Now, what's hard about an executive summary is you're trying to do all that in 1 to 2 pages. And so what you are really trying to do is distill all this information down into a series of sentences, probably 1 to 2 sentences for each one of these, that describes the key information people need to understand who you are, what you do, where you fit in, why you are what customers are going to want, how you're going to make money, and why you're going to be successful. So that is in essence what an executive summary is trying to do. Now, there are ways to think about how do you organize this information and how might you portray it in an executive summary. So most experts will say this in terms of thinking about it. One is you have to make sure in the opening sentence or sentences you're describing to people the problem that you are solving. You have, I'd say, Dan James, who used to be one of the mentors in residence at the McGuire Center, used to talk all the time. You have 15 to 30 seconds in order to capture someone's attention. Because, you know, Steve, you're reviewing a whole bunch of applications. You're trying to get right out of the gate. Is this something that has legs to it? Is this something that I would be interested in? Is it solving a problem that's big enough, that's interesting enough, that is significant enough that there's a business here? So lead with the problem, and in pretty short order after that, present what your solution is to the problem and why you're something worth investing in. When we talk about presenting your solution, you're not talking about presenting the technical details of your solution. Rather, you want to talk about how you're solving the problem in a broad sense. So maybe it is giving people tools that they didn't have, or maybe it is applying artificial intelligence to solving a problem of control, or maybe it is allowing people to be more flexible in how they approach problems. You're talking about a high-level solution rather than in the technical details. If people want to know more, they certainly can read your business plan to find out the technical details, or they can pull you aside and follow up with questions and ask you afterward. You want to show that you understand the customers and market. Again, what do customers want? How do you know that they want it? What's telling you that? Essentially, you're trying to tell people that I really do have product market fit. And sometimes what happens is people talk about the product side of things, like we have this great product, we think it'll solve all kinds of problems in the world, but they're not demonstrating how they understand customers and how they know that customers will be interested in this. So you have to really want to talk about both sides. I know who the market is, I know what they're interested in, I know what their issues are, and I know why my solution is something that will appeal to them. Right? After that is what makes your company stand out. Is it something that is proprietary? Do you have a patent? Do you have some intellectual property that can be created? You have some novel technological solution or some contacts that's going to make you someone that is likely to be successful. Make sure that people see that up front, because if I'm an investor, that's certainly something that I'm very interested in. You want to prove to people that you have a business model. So somewhere in your executive summary, you want to signal to people, not signal, you want to say in concrete ways, here is how I'm going to generate revenue. Here's why this is going to scale up to be more than a business that I'm running out of my spare bedroom in my house. I might do that at first, but here's my idea for how it will scale up. Here's the timeline I have for rolling this out, about how I am going to gain market share, how I am going to attract more customers, how I'm going to roll out the product and distribute it in a way that's going to allow me to actually make money before long. Because remember, one of the really important things your investors are interested in is how they're going to make money. And so you have to be able to communicate to that there is a business model here, not simply a great idea that will solve somebody's problem, but I can make money doing that, and here's how. You certainly, you want to think about, how do I disclose in my executive summary what my financials are? So how much money have you raised? What are you seeking? People are very interested in what you are going to use that money for. So I've heard lots of pitches where people talk about it's going to allow us to, they're very general about what they're going to dedicate that money to. If there's particular talent you need to hire, if there are particular equipment or that you need to invest in. Certainly your investors want to know, why are you asking them for money, and how is it going to help the business grow in a meaningful way or in a systematic way. And then as you put this information in there, you want to format it so that it is it's something that people can look through quickly and make sense of, that they can find this information out there. So putting headings in an executive summary, even if you only have 2 or 3 sentences under each heading, that I know what the company is, I know what the value proposition is, I can tell you what the market is, where they can actually scan through it quickly and go ahead and pull most important things out of it. Now, in each of these slides coming up, I've given you a link to a document that will explain much of these ideas more in depth. So if you are more of a visual learner rather than an auditory learner, you can go ahead and read more on each of these particular issues. There are other ways to think about, how you, what are the key components, or how do I organize things? Guy Kawasaki, who's written so many things about being an entrepreneur, talks about putting the grab up front. Grab their attention, have a compelling statement about why this is a big idea. Make sure people see what the problem is that you are solving. If you're just going in and talking about what your business is and you haven't really identified, here's the problem that my venture solves, this is essentially what my value proposition is, then people are wondering, yeah, you have an idea for how you want to make money, but how do I know that it's actually going to solve a problem that people have or create an opportunity that people have? Because that's where the real value is in your venture, in your offer. You want to make sure that you concretely state what your solution is. Can't emphasize this enough. I have listened to, I know a number of you have gone through ICOR, and I've seen pitches, I've seen people present in various ways. And after 3 or 4 minutes of listening to people talk, oftentimes I'm still not sure exactly what they do. Whether it's a product or a service, is it bigger than a bread box? Is it something that is you can put in people's hands? But really being able to say, this is what my solution is, this is what it looks like, and this is what it does, is really important for people being able to, for investors being able to visualize what it is that they're investing in. So again, similar, show you understand the market, show that you have a competitive advantage, all the other things, show that you have revenues, that your team is uniquely qualified, that there's some expertise that lies behind you. I hear so many students who go and run pitches who say, I'm a marketing major at the University of Arizona, and therefore we're going to be able to market this product. That doesn't convince anybody that you're uniquely qualified just because you have a background. Rather is, what do you know, what have you learned, what have you done before that makes your team likely to be successful at launching your venture. And then, of course, again, you've got to demonstrate to people that there's an opportunity to make money here, and to communicate to people what you're going to use that money for. So just different ways that you can organize the same idea of what you put into your executive summary. When you think about what else might you include, if you have unique information that will signal your success, so I already have customers who are willing to pay me money. I have a back order of orders. I put this in people's hands and they actually have positive things to say. Anything tangible that you can point to show that you have traction in the marketplace, you certainly want to include that in a sentence or two to signal to investors that this isn't just a good idea. this is actually something that is working in practice. If you know what your milestones are, when are you going to roll things out? When are you going to run things live? If you're selling online, when is the page going to go live? All of these particular are things that you certainly want to try and signal to people in your executive summary. Evidence that you've gotten prior backing, that you have money that you're drawing on, that you have previous experience. Again, the investors are not just evaluating the idea you have, they're evaluating you. And so the things you have accomplished are things that you certainly want to put in place. I think I have just one or two more slides here. In fact, Anita, I added one compared to what I sent you this morning. In terms of what to avoid, this is the other thing is you know, if you look for, there isn't one way to do executive summaries. There are, if you look online, there's a zillion templates that you can use to do things. You can tell the story your way. You just want people to find the information. But things that you want to avoid are things such as using these really big sweeping statements about what a big market this is and what a big market opportunity it is. And I envision myself gathering 1% of an infinitely large market. That does not impress any of the investors that I have interacted with. They want to know that you have a compelling problem to solve, that you've demonstrated it's a real problem that customers care about, and that you have a solution for doing it. So don't be too general that you can't point to a specific problem. Make it concrete for them. You want to be careful. Don't just drop names unless they're real names that are worth dropping. So if you have a partnership, if you have an alliance with an expert, if you actually have worked at a particular company rather than just had an internship one time years ago where you have an ID badge that says, yeah, I was on the premises for a while, yeah, say their name. But if it's just this fleeting connection to a company, don't oversell yourself, because if you do, then investors are starting to wonder how real you are, if you're willing to oversell kind of your credentials and background. So avoid to put things in there that are meaningful. Is really what you want to think about. I love this phrase that in executive summaries, you want to avoid purple farts. The way I talk about it in my class, you want to avoid using buzzwords, which are phrases and adjectives that sound really impressive but actually have no meaning to them. So we see this all the time in working with the executives and MBA students that I work with, where they talk about next generation technologies, we're world class. What does that mean? So it's fine to use that if you can actually explain what it is, but it's better actually to just explain what you're doing rather than to put fancy adjectives to describe what you are doing. So avoid meaningless phrases. You only have so much space to use it, so use that wisely. People talk about other things to think about is don't state your value proposition in terms of nobody can do this with me, other people can't do this. Rather, be positive about what you can do. It's fine to say that there's a part of the market that isn't filled by current offerings or my competitors, but you really want to talk positively about your company rather than trying to say a negative thing about what you're doing. It's best to talk in terms of simple sentences, and then as a general rule for life, don't lie about what you're doing. And what I've put here is a link to some of the most famous lies that entrepreneurs catch, or that investors catch entrepreneurs making, or claims that they make that aren't necessarily true, that they put into their executive summaries, and I'll allow you to look at that in your own time. Last slide, and then I'll get out of the way, and we'll look at the questions in the chat and have this as more of a dialogue. I was looking at some of the things that I've heard people say, but also what I see people post, and you say, okay, what goes wrong with some of the executive summaries that people write? So here's one venture capitalist's point of view on that particular issue. One, that bad summaries are way too long. They go past 2 pages. Then the people put more content in them that they have. Again, you've got to capture people's attention right off the bat. So if you make them too long, people aren't going to look at them, and you're not going to get on people's radars. That they write a volume of text instead of boiling things down to 1 to 2 sentences. They write paragraphs, and they write them in a long story form, so that there's no way for people to skim and really understand where is the problem, what's the solution, is there product market fit, what does the market look like. That's what investors are asking, and so don't just write a long, don't do stream of consciousness writing. You want to try and make it easier for people to find things. We see this all the time when we watch companies pitch. I've seen it here. I've seen it in California as well. The companies, lots of investors, lots of entrepreneurs say they're unique. They don't have any competition. And yet it is pretty easy for any investor to Google and find somebody who's offering a similar or related service to what you are doing. So don't delude yourself into thinking that you are so unique that there is no competition out there. There is somebody trying to solve a problem that you are addressing. They may be doing it in a very different way. You may be unique in how you're trying to solve the problem, but don't underestimate that there's competition out there, because that's what investors are worried about, that you won't make business and you won't be able to be successful in what you do. It's a bad executive summary, as I mentioned before, if after reading it, people still don't know what your company does, what the product or service looks like. If they're thinking, okay, you have a product, I may understand it, but I still don't know how you're going to make money doing this. So these are very simple things you want to avoid. You certainly want to make sure that when you are describing your market, you're not describing it in such general terms that people can't understand who it is that you are targeting or selling to. So it is far better to be specific about how you see your market than it is to do these big generalizations and then talk about what percentage of the market that you're trying to capture. So be specific in a high level and succinct way. And I know those sound at odds with one another, but this is one of the things that you just have to practice.
Wait,
then
so
again,
you said you put this in your executive summary?
nope, these are things you avoid in your executive summary.
Oh,
But
I'm
you certainly
sorry.
want to know who your market is.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Right? But don't just say it is a large demographic group and I anticipate getting 5% of it.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So what can you tell them about your customer? Because I think I have watched pitches for so many years now, and I think every investor asks the same question: is how do you really know that is your market? How do you know they're going to want your solution? And if you can't demonstrate some knowledge about the market, they're skeptical right off the bat. They think you're just making numbers up. People love to make projections rather than to provide that they have insights about the market. And so these are the things that you want to make sure that you say something about the team. Again, if they don't believe in you, you're not going to be very successful at convincing investors to invest in you. So these are sort of my things to think about when you are, I'll stop sharing now, but these are things to think about when you're putting together an executive summary. And the advice for how you do it is start to write that story in less than 2 pages, give it to somebody to read so they can say, do I understand what you're trying to tell me? Am I convinced that you have a good command of the problem, you have your solution addresses it, that you understand the market, that they see how the story fits together? And if it is compelling, then you're more likely to be successful in attracting attention from investors.